Hi, I'm Eric Goldberg, and I'm a director and animator. Most people know me from my work with Walt Disney Animation Studios. Being a creature of habit, I tend to like to do 11 by 17 at a resolution of 200 because it's easy to print from, you know, and it's still large enough to make a decent drawing. 200 DPI because it still allows me to keep things kind of grainy with the pencil I use. So on the eraser, I have it set to a 13. Maybe I'll just take that down to a 9 and make that a little smaller. There we go. And that's in the normal brushes. Then on the brush I'm going to draw with, I actually use the dry media brushes setting in the menu, and I go to a number 6, and then I take it down to a 4, and I use that both for underdrawing and for tying down. Hang on a second. There we go. So I'm going to add a layer, and I'm going to start doing my underdrawing. Now, when I like to animate on paper, you know, I tend to like to underdraw lightly. I will draw one of my characters here. All the illustrations for my character animation crash course book were actually done on the Wacom Cintiq. And this is one of the characters from that book. He doesn't have a name, so I'll call him Orange Cat. And I'll have a little draw of him sitting and drawing at the Cintiq. And I can really visualize things very, very fast this way. A lot of animators, when working traditionally, like to work with different colors for their underdrawing. Some people like red, some people like blue. Personally, I've always liked working with the actual black of the pencil itself because I feel like that adds weight and form to the final drawing when you go ahead and tie it down. So I will go ahead and continue this like so. What I'll do now is I'll go ahead and I will start tying it down on a new layer. But before I do that, one thing I can do is take the layer I've just drawn and take the opacity and put it down to 50%. So the underdrawing is still there, but not as dark. And then on the new layer, I'll put that back at 100%. So now the tie down layer that I'm doing is actually going to be the layer you will see the most, but it'll still have the nice underdrawing on it. One thing that's great with the Cintiq and Photoshop is that you can blow things up. So I can make a fairly sketchy looking line here. It still feels like a pencil drawing, but when I reduce it back down, it gets nice and crisp. Still feels like a drawing, but you know, I have the ability to actually work much, much larger and still feel that tooth and grain to what I'm drawing here. I know some people have felt that the pencil glides too much, or the stylus glides too much on a Cintiq, and they find it a bit of a slippery slope. I actually love it. It helps me draw faster because it is a little bit slick, but I can still get a nice grained line, but just that much faster with less pressure. So I tend to keep the pressure sensitivity fairly low on what I'm doing, so I can visualize fairly quickly, but still get that great kind of spontaneity in the drawing that I enjoy doing. Here's a tool that I love. I'm looking at this ear that I've drawn here, and I think, oh, the inside of the ear is a little too small. So I'll grab the lasso tool, and I will lasso the inside of this ear. And then I'll go up to Transform Warp. And what I can do is pull these points here and here, so all of a sudden he's got a much larger inside of his ear. And then apply and deselect, and now that's the size that I want it. And to be able to do that, you know, constantly as you're continuing to draw and improve is great. You can constantly check yourself that way. Back in the 40s, when animators were working, one of the things that they really did quite well is streamline. For the most part, the lines you're making are rounded and smooth. Not a lot of extraneous drawing going on. One of my great animation heroes, Freddie Moore, was, I think, the definitive expert on streamlining drawing in animation. But all the studios did it at that time. And I think in terms of the spirit, you know, if you look at this cat's face, we'll zoom out a little bit. I mean, he's one of those characters who's enjoying what he's doing, you know. And like I said before, when I animate, I really love animation that looks like it's enjoying itself on the screen. That really makes me feel great, and I can think of countless pieces of animation, you know, that make me feel that way. Like, it's not just the artist who had a good time making it, it's the character himself or herself that's actually having the enjoyment on screen. I'm going to decide to decrease the opacity on this underlayer even more, just so it has a little bit of construction line to it, but not a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and combine it with the other layer. So I turn off the background and I go to Layer, Merge Visible. Now it's all on one layer. And I can go in and I can erase certain bits that I think don't look quite so hot, especially around his eyes. So pick a color off the swatch and my brush tool, and literally I will just color underneath the line work. And one thing that helps to do, as opposed to using the fill tool, is that it actually makes the lines, which have a little bit of transparency to them, more solid when you put the color behind them. I will go for a larger brush, so it won't take quite as much time. There we go, that's a little better. How many of us had drummed into our heads when we were younger, don't color outside the lines? Well, that's the nice thing about the Cintiq. You can color outside the lines and you can fix your mistakes. Look, teacher, it's perfect. Normally on a 40s style character, inside mouth would be a variant of brown, but let's make it a slightly duller brown. I do that by picking the color picker and then moving this more towards black, so that dulls it down a little bit. And by dulling it down, it actually helps it recede back into the cat's head cavity a little more. Inside ears and his muzzle are this yellow. Now, one thing that's great if I mess up here is that I can always use the eyedropper tool. There's the eyedropper tool. Switch that and get back my original color, so I can go ahead and repair this bit here and then go back to the rest that I was going ahead and coloring. So say I wanted to put a little airbrushy background behind the guy. So let's make a little bit of a new layer, layer 3, and put that under everything else except the background, and I'm going to pick a blue. Alright, so I'm going to do two things. I'll pick a fairly vibrant blue and I'll make it more vibrant like so. And now I'm going to pick a brush that is blurry and make it rather large. Say, let's say about 300 pixels. There we go. And what I'm going to do then is just do this behind our friend cat here. Now, maybe I think that's a little too dark, so I take the layer tool, go to layer style, blending options, and I just take down the opacity a little bit to make it a little more of a pale blue. And go back to the color layer, find some white, pick another solid brush, and call that, say, maybe a 13, and just fill in his eyeballs, and fill in a highlight on his nose, and sooner or later you get something that looks semi-reasonable. Well, I hope you got a little bit out of that. Thanks for joining us. Happy drawing, everybody. See you later.